August 12, 1985. A date that remains etched in the minds of those who remember one of the darkest days in aviation history. Japan Airlines Flight 123 was scheduled for a simple domestic hop, a short 54-minute journey from Tokyo's bustling Haneda Airport to Osaka. But what unfolded that evening would become the worst single aircraft disaster the world has ever seen. 520 people, men, women, and children, boarded the flight, expecting a quick and uneventful trip. They had no idea that the next hour would become a nightmare from which only 4 would emerge alive. What caused this tragedy? A technical failure? Human error? Or something deeper? A systemic flaw hidden in plain sight? In this video, we explore the terrifying final moments of Flight 123, the incredible fight for survival, the haunting legacy of the crash, and the painful truth that this disaster could have been avoided. Flight 123 was operated by a Boeing 747SR. It is a short-range variant of the iconic jumbo jet, specifically built to handle Japan's high-density domestic routes. The plane was registered as JA 8119, and it had already logged over 25,000 flight hours. Among the passengers were office workers, tourists, young children, and even celebrities, including singer Q Sakamoto, known internationally for his hit song Sukiyaki. The flight was scheduled to leave at 6 p.m. but departed slightly late, at 6:12 p.m. The weather was clear. There were no signs that this would be anything but a routine journey. Inside the cockpit were 3 highly experienced crew members: Captain Masami Takahama with over 12,000 flight hours, First Officer Yutaka Sasaki, and Flight Engineer Hiroshi Fukuda. Together, they were among the best in the airline's roster. Air traffic control cleared the aircraft to climb to 24,000 feet. The ascent was smooth, passengers settled in, and the seatbelt signs were switched off. But at exactly 6:24 p.m., just 12 minutes after takeoff, a loud explosion reverberated through the plane. The aircraft shuddered, alarms blared in the cockpit. Something had gone terribly wrong. The bang was deafening. The tail of the aircraft had exploded. A massive decompression tore through the fuselage. In seconds, the vertical stabilizer, the tail fin, was gone. All 4 hydraulic systems failed. The plane had no steering, no brakes, no flaps, no elevator control, and it was still flying. The pilots, Captain Masami Takahama, First Officer Yutaka Sasaki, and Flight Engineer Hiroshi Fukuda, were now facing the unthinkable: a 747 that couldn't be flown. The plane began to yaw left and right uncontrollably. Passengers screamed. Oxygen masks dropped. For the next 32 minutes, the crew would struggle to control a crippled aircraft, with no flight controls. That loud bang was the sound of catastrophic decompression. The aft pressure bulkhead, a crucial structural component at the rear of the plane, had failed. A massive hole opened at the tail of the aircraft. In a matter of seconds, the vertical stabilizer, the tall fin at the back of the plane, was completely torn off. With it, all 4 hydraulic systems, the lifeblood of the aircraft's control surfaces, were destroyed. The cockpit was immediately filled with warning lights. But the pilot's worst fear quickly became a reality. They had lost all hydraulic power. That meant no elevators to control pitch, no rudder to control yaw, and no ailerons to control roll. A Boeing 747 without hydraulics is effectively unflyable. It becomes a 400-ton glider with no way to steer. But against all odds, Flight 123 was still in the air. The pilots tried desperately to regain control. They discovered that by adjusting engine thrust asymmetrically, applying more power to one side than the other, they could influence the plane's heading slightly. It was rudimentary and barely functional, but it was something. What followed was a terrifying and unprecedented struggle to keep the aircraft in the sky. At 6:56 p.m., after half an hour of struggle, Flight 123 struck Mount Takamagahara in Ueno, Gunma Prefecture. The impact was devastating. The front of the aircraft disintegrated. The rear section broke apart but remained relatively intact. And it was there, among the wreckage, that the only 4 survivors were found. Yumi Ochiai, a 26-year-old flight attendant, Keiko Kawakami, a 12-year-old girl, and 2 women seated toward the back of the plane. They had been spared by a combination of luck and location. Their seats had absorbed less of the impact. Rescue teams, however, didn't arrive until the next morning. Despite radar evidence and eyewitness reports, search and rescue operations were delayed by bureaucratic confusion and nightfall. Many believe more lives could have been saved had the response been faster. The official investigation revealed the cause: the failed repair of the aft pressure bulkhead. In 1978, the same aircraft had suffered a tail strike on landing. Boeing was tasked with repairing the damage, but instead of using the correct 3-row rivet joint to reinforce the bulkhead, the repair crew used a 2-row joint, a mistake that reduced the strength of the structure by 70%. For 7 years, every time the plane pressurized and depressurized, microscopic cracks grew along the faulty joint. On August 12, 1985, the crack reached critical size. The bulkhead tore apart. The rest is tragic history. The crash of Flight 123 shook Japan to its core. Memorials were held nationwide. Families demanded answers. Airlines reevaluated their maintenance protocols. Japan Airlines took responsibility. Boeing apologized. New standards were implemented for bulkhead inspections and repairs. The accident also led to reforms in emergency response coordination, ensuring that future crashes would be met with faster and more organized rescue efforts. But for many, the pain remains. The letters, the voices, the faces of those lost are never forgotten. Flight 123 remains the deadliest single aircraft accident in aviation history. It was not caused by a terrorist attack, not by a storm, but by a tiny, invisible crack. It reminds us how fragile safety is and how vital every step of the aviation process must be. To those who lost their lives, to those who survived, and to those who still carry the scars of that day, this story is for you. May we never forget what happened on Japan Airlines Flight 123.